Once again, this episode is being brought to you by dieselfuelprints.com. Diesel Fuel Prints has been in the sticker business since 1991, and they've been printing all of my stickers since the early 2000s. Dieselfuelprints.com has easy online ordering and quotes for stickers of any size and shape. Full color printing on the highest quality weatherproof material, and 125 black and white stickers starts at $25. Shipping's always free, and listeners of this show can get 10% off when they use the promo code AWP 2021. So go check out Diesel Fuel Prints for your sticker needs. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is illustrator artist Johnny Sampson. Johnny is an artist for Mad Magazine. He does the fold-in. He kind of inherited that from Al Jaffe. That's a very big deal. I think if you're in the illustration world, anybody familiar with Mad Magazine loves that fold-in back cover. And we talk about how he got that gig and other stuff he's done with Mad Magazine. He's also a professional illustrator. He does paintings for, different album covers and books and magazines, all different types of things. He's absolutely one of my favorite illustrators ever. And, I know I'm prone to say things like that, but I'm very serious. He is definitely one of my favorite illustrators ever. And we talk a little bit about the fact that he painted one of my very favorite album covers ever. For King Kong and the Barbecue Show. So, as always, you can find the links to Johnny's work down below. You're probably already familiar with it, even if you don't know his name. You can also find the links down below to my Patreon and to all the merch for, shirts and buttons and pins for the podcast. I appreciate all the support I get from all my guests. And yeah, let's get right to the episode. This is one of my favorite episodes I've done on this podcast to date. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. Today's guest, as I said up front, is Johnny Sampson. Johnny is a cartoonist and illustrator out of Chicago. And, I guess at this point, kind of most famous for the fact that you work for Mad Magazine and you are the guy who does the fold-in on the back cover.
I am.
How are you, man? How are you? We'll get more into that as we go on, but like anybody who listens to this show knows that I always do like a little warm-up chat with people before we get going. So me and Johnny have been talking a little bit, and we know each other just through the illustration and like poster scene over the years, and we've never actually like met in person. So this is like, for me, I'm just such a super huge fan of your work, like going all the way back, that it's really cool to actually get to sit and talk with you and get to know a little bit more about you and your work and stuff.
Likewise, man. This is great. It's really nice to be able to do this with you. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that you've been on my list of like, I need to ask Johnny to be on for a while now. But what brought you to the front of my mind when I started booking this next group of guests is on your Facebook page. You've been posting an old comic strip that you did, I think maybe in high school almost, and the thing about it was I was like, you can see where your style was developing, but it's so different than how you work now. And, just was like, oh, I need to talk to Johnny.
Totally. Yeah. That was an old friend of mine from like grade school, really. And he wrote it and I drew it, and that was 2003 maybe. So it was post high school, post college, but it was still like early stages of me like actually developing some kind of a style. And so some of it was content wise was a little cringy. Some of it was actually pretty good. But as far as like drawing, it was getting there, it wasn't quite fully realized. And what that was is like he put together all these, he wrote the strips, I drew them. It was a comic strip, and the intent was to shop it around syndicates and see if we can get it published. And he actually sent it in, and we got rejected, but it was a nice letter and stuff. But yeah, it was a pretty cool experience, and nothing that we ever really revisited after that. But yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I had an art, my art teacher that was like that I was kind of like connected to for 3 of my years in high school. He kind of glommed on me and was like you have talent, like you have the talent and the drive to work professionally as an artist in some way. And so he helped me trying to figure out, what that might be. And for a while, he's
Wow.
like, you need to have a comic strip. That's how you make money nowadays as an artist. This is like in the 80s, and it was like the
Yeah.
5 most highest income artists on earth were like, Jim Davis and like Garfield. It was like it was a huge, because all that stuff was getting licensed into toys and stuffed
Oh
animals,
yeah.
and like all the cartoon, like there was like 5 cartoonists that were just like raking it in. And I just never, I'm not good at redrawing the same characters over and over so that they look the same. And that's why I was never really interested in being a comic book artist either. Is like,
Yeah.
that wasn't really where it was at for me at all. But he was like, he made me do some strips and send them out just so I had the experience of
Wow.
submitting something to someone and like getting a letter back and like understanding how the professional side of being an artist worked. And it was super beneficial for sure.
Yeah. Well, geez, yeah, I never had that experience. Like my high school art teacher was great. She was super supportive, and she passed away like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. So that's sad. I wish I could go back and say like, hey, look at this, but yeah, I can't do that. And so when I went to college, it was like I studied painting at the University of Illinois, and they just totally discouraged anything commercial. So it was like, illustration, boo, you want to be an artist, it's like, okay. But I kind of bought into on that, all of that. And it took a while to kind of, well, I mean, when I got out of college, I was like, yeah, I want to be an artist, but I had no idea what that meant. I knew how to shoot slides of my work, but it was like what to do with that afterwards. It only, I mean, we could talk about that stuff, but like, when reality kind of settled in, I was like, oh, all right, well, what can I actually do with the art, that I like to make? And yeah, so that's why we're here today.
Totally. Yeah. That's been a thing that's come up, just recently a few times. I had artist Kristen K. Farrell on, and she speaks at art schools quite a lot. And one of her big pushes to art schools and to art students is that there's not enough education on how to be a professional artist once you get done with school. And they're just,
Yeah.
and, she's like, schools are still telling people to send out portfolios to galleries. And she's like, that's absolutely insane. Like, that's how disconnected art schools are from what it's like to be a real artist. And so, it's come up a couple times with other artists. And so I totally understand. I mean, I'm self-taught. I went to animation and art school for like a year, and then like had my first kid and quit and started working. So I didn't have like the full experience of art school really.
Yeah.
Which on some level makes me jealous that I didn't. And it makes me wonder how different my career would have been. I mean, I've only been successful because I'm relentless and not because I'm actually very good at anything. I mean, I'm good at a few things, but
Yeah, they can't teach you that,
yeah.
That's definitely comes from you. And I feel like I'm the same way. I feel like for my art school experience, like the foundation classes were the most important for me. I mean, but then it was like studio classes where it's like, do what you want, and it's like, but that, it was great to have the freedom, but then it was like, all right, but like I'm not really learning anything. This is me doing my best attempt at this thing, and no one can really tell me how to do it any better. And it was, like at that point, it was like, I don't know what I'm getting out of this. I learned a lot more out of school, and that was, just from just keep like working and like drawing constantly, and and like the internet blew the just blew it all wide open, where it's like, oh my God, I'm seeing all this stuff I've never seen before. And like, why haven't I ever seen this? I was like, oh, and then you're like starting to realize like, oh, there's like an actual history to like advertising art, and like, this is where this comes from. And this is, so all that was new to me.
On a personal, just about your work that you do now, most of the time you work in gouache, and it's one of those mediums that I've never really worked in. I've worked in it digitally, but I've never worked in it in a real analog sense. But and this is the thing that has always been, that attracted me to your work so deeply, is it goes to that old school advertising illustration style. It's that 60s and 50s look. That was all the old movie posters and all the board game boxes and like toy boxes and stuff were all painted with gouache in that look. And the way that you were able to create a style that was kind of an updated almost version of that, this has made me fall in love with your work so much, because as a little kid in the 70s, I had an older cousin and some older neighbors, so I got all the hand-me-down toys and games. And so like the first art I became attracted to were all these old board game covers that were painted that way. So when I saw your gouache work, it was like immediately a connect for me, and I just absolutely love it.
Well, thanks, man. And I don't even know if I put that together when I started using it, but it's totally what you're talking about. Like I've got this puzzle. It's this Zorro puzzle from, the 60s or something. And I like when I saw it again for the first time in years, like I'd forgotten about it. But I remember like when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that's the thing. That's the thing that like got me into like wanting to paint, or, or just thinking about art, and just like, it was like a real, like it resonated with me, and
for sure, man,
just been chasing that feeling ever since.
Well, I think every artist on earth has that common experience. There was some thing that you saw that was like that hit the switch for you. Made it. When I was little, I had some natural art skills that just come from my family, kind of having some artists in my family. Both my parents are hobby artists. Neither of them are professional artists. My mother is an amazing painter. And my dad is just, he was like an old school pinstriper and kind of cartoonist, and, just, he would always draw stuff for us when we were kids, and it was just, it was totally amazing. But so when they saw that I had a little bit of natural ability, they put me into they found a woman in the neighborhood who did art classes for kids. And so like 3 times a week, I went over to her house into her garage and like learned the fundamentals of like how to paint and, just basic stuff. It was just, I was probably 10, 11, 12, 13. I probably went to her place for a few years, but that was as close to an art education as I actually got. But, at some point I was like, I'm bored of painting the cover of like whatever magazine she has on the table. She'd always be like, okay, go over and pull, a National Geographic or a Time magazine and find a picture that you like, and we'll learn how to paint that. And like, I just kind of got bored of that. And then when I got into skateboarding and punk rock, it was like started seeing like Pusshead art on stuff. Yeah. And that was the thing for me. It was like, okay, now I think I have the skills to start doing stuff like this. And so, I mean, that's where it started for me, for sure. So yeah, I think for every artist, there's some thing that clicks, and you're like, I have the ability to do this, I think. You know what I mean? And then
yeah, for sure.
And then it's never ending from there, right? and then you're like, life is ruined forever.
Yeah. Skateboarding was just a huge influence on me too.
Our whole generation, man. Our whole generation.
Yeah, I've been picking it up lately too, which is yeah. You were talking with Jim Cowens about that, and like, well, he mentioned that he broke both of his wrists at some point. I'm like, fuck that. So, and he skates padless, right? So, but I got my first pair of wrist guards. I never had them before. I've been wearing those. So I go to a half pipe, this bowl nearby, and actually a lot of different places. But yeah, it's great. Love it.
Yeah, Jim. I've watched Jim hurt himself a lot of times. We watched each other hurt get hurt a lot of times over the years skateboarding. Yeah, good old Jimmy. Love that guy. So have you ever done any skateboard graphics?
No, I want to.
Yeah,
so
I bet you do.
Yeah,
Your work would be so perfect for it. Either your cartoon work or your gouache work. Either one would be like so good for the.
Yeah,
good for that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, with the printing capabilities they have now, it's like you don't have to stay within like a key line and 5 colors or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Everything's heat pressed now. They just like print them out on these big sheets, and it just gets heat pressed onto the deck, which is crazy. Yeah. It's totally crazy. I mean, it's been that way for a while now, but there are still some companies who do screen print their decks. For the most part, I think like Dogtown definitely has, their factory still has some stuff that does that, I think. But yeah, like, there was a whole generation of us that kind of grew up in the 80s that got that second wave of skateboard bug when it got huge, and then it kind of went away again. And then my sons, who are like in their early 30s, who grew up in the late 90s to late 2000s, like there's a whole third generation.
Yeah.
I think in the 70s it was, skateboarding was hindered a little bit by the technology. They just didn't have the technology yet to make equipment that could do things that the second generation equipment could do, like wheels, trucks, everything. So it was a little bit different there, but going back a little bit to your gouache work, is that something you learned in art school, or is that something you taught yourself after? Did you work that way in art school?
No, and yeah, I never touched gouache in art school, to my knowledge. I know I tried watercolor a little bit, and I primarily fucked around with oil paints, and but yeah, that was post school, and I think it may have been when I started working at Pearl Art and Craft in Chicago. I know there was a Pearl in LA for a while, but
there was a couple of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think ours shut down about the same time yours did too. But that's take home some samples and work with those in a sketchbook. And that was the nice thing about them is like what I like about gouache is that you can you can work. Which way do I work? Dark to light. Yeah, dark to light. Dark to light, where with watercolor you have to work light to dark because you can't. It's not opaque; it's transparent, and so gouache is opaque and super matte. So you can do whatever you want with them. And like if you make a mistake, you cover it up with white and then start over on it. And but I think the reason they use that primarily for advertising art is because when they took photos of it, there was no glare at all. It was all just very flat and reproduced really well. I love it.
Yeah, I think also probably to speak a little bit to that is like it also, like you said, it's opaque, and if the client needed changes, you could make those changes fairly easily.
Yeah. Totally. I recently did a job for Monster Mash cereal, and initially they wanted it hand painted, and I was like, all right, we're gonna do gouache paintings for, it's like in the back of my mind I was like, oh man, revisions are gonna suck with this, but they they're also asking like, can we do it layered? And like, let's just do it digital. And that was actually the first time I really have done like a finished like digital painting for like a client. I was kind of figuring it out on the fly and on the job. Yeah. But it turned out pretty all right.
Did you? Okay. So I've seen that box and I didn't know that you had done that work. So now I have to go back and look at it again.
Oh, it's not the box art.
Okay.
It was for like this mini pseudo documentary about the monsters getting back together and playing the Monster Mash again. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh wait, was it for the cereal though?
It was for the cereal.
Okay.
So, but it just lives on the internet, like generalmills.com or something,
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, I'm gonna need to go check that out for sure.
Okay.
Because I mean, those characters, like I think, and again, like every kid ever, like in all the way into your adulthood, when it becomes fall, one of the best things is like, oh, the monster shearers are coming back. It's like
Totally.
those characters are so amazing. Like on my toy shelf behind, I have like some like Count Chocula figures and like exactly. Yeah, they're like such great characters. Like, the children's cereal of the 70s and 80s, and even still now, it's evil. And it's like, I don't know how corporations convinced Americans that breakfast was also dessert time. To start your day was a good idea. But all the characters for all the cereals, they're so good. They're so good.
Totally.
Even still, like, I mean, I actually painted a goalie mask. There's a guy who I paint for, whose nickname is Captain Crunch. And so we do Captain Crunch masks. And he's like, I'm really into Mars Attacks right now. And so I did like a Mars, like the captain is defending the cereal from the Mars Attacks aliens. And so it's like, they like do this whole like Captain Crunch inside this like Captain Crunch pirate ship, like spacecraft, like it was like, dude, anyway, it was super fun. But it's like, just like those characters are so solid, and like, all the animation in the commercials is always great. It's just, but it's dessert.
Yes, I know. It's when I get it for, like, we have 2 kids, and she's 12 and he's 10, but it's a weekend treat.
Yeah,
can't have it before school.
Yeah, no, I mean, come on, like like every teacher in the 70s and 80s must have just been like, something's got to change. The first hour of class is unbelievable.
Well, that's why they always said part of a complete breakfast, so they also put a picture of like, the orange juice, the pancakes, the eggs.
I know, right? Like that ever happened.
Yeah.
That ever happened ever. So when you say you on that piece you worked digitally, did you do a digital gouache piece? So did you use like the brushes in Photoshop that simulate gouache painting?
Right. I've got the Kyle brushes.
Yeah, so do I. I've done a lot of gouache paintings with those.
I don't know. I don't think they're the gouache ones though. They were just like the oil. I don't know if I think I paid for them a while ago. This is the first time I've ever really used them, but it was like, it's the oil ones where like you put one color down and you do another one over it and it smears it together. And so I was working like on one layer, like say I was doing Frankenberry's head. And so I'd use pink and like, shade it with whatever. But then it just kind of, I was like, fuck, I was like 7 of these I had to do. And it was like really quick turnaround. So it was taking too long. And especially for editing, like it was just kind of a headache. So I did like another layer of shade with the same brushes, but it was just black and white that I set to multiply. So it was just like an overlay on top of the flat color. And so, but it made it look like, an actual painting, So.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about working digitally, even in traditional style media, is like, you can undo, and B, you've got layers available to you. I'm actually working on an album cover right now that's like got the front and back are one large landscape, and I'm using the gouache brushes in Photoshop, the Kyle's gouache brushes, and this is another thing that's been kind of brought up a little bit, and it's like, I stopped working traditionally analog on a professional level probably 5 or 6 years ago, after I got my first tablet monitor, and it's just so much faster, and it's just so much more editable and stuff. And it's like, if I paint analog now, it's just for fun. It's just stuff that I do for me. And so, it's,
Yeah, I've got the Wacom. It's like 9x14 or some shit. It was like I was working on a job that was like I had a deadline. I was using my the Intuos tablet where you're drawing on the table and looking at the screen, and it just totally conked out. And so I had to get something, and this is the only one they had available like nearby, because I wanted to get the bigger one. And I wish I had waited, because I'm not so thrilled about this. I watched I think it was the Kozik one that you had, and he was talking about that, where like you're working on the iPad with the Procreate on there. Like it's just too small and dinky. It's like you can't like. It's like it's hard to see scale on that, right? But with like these big monitors now, like it's much easier to do that. So I don't know. One of these days I'll get the big one.
The only reason I got it is because Kozik sold me his so cheap I couldn't possibly say no. Like even like because like I've been wanting one forever. Of course, it's like the ultimate like artist toy for digital work. The big 24-inch Cintiq thing weighs like 200 pounds. It's insane. And like so I'd always wanted one. And like so when I was like at Frank's studio, like and he's like, yeah, like you can have it for I called my wife and I was like, you gonna let me spend this money on this? Because it's like a third of what I would pay new. And she's like, go for it. And I was like, yes. And like, both of the tablet monitors that I have had, they paid for themselves within, almost a month. Like just how much quicker you can work on stuff. It's insane.
Is he still selling that one he was talking about? Or is that gone?
I don't know. I'm sure it's gone probably. I can't like it if you weren't local and it would cost so much to ship these things. They're so goddamn heavy. The base is like 50 pounds.
Oh wow.
They're super heavy so that so they don't tip over and you can but they're worth it, I'd say. But I mean you with your comic strip work, to talk a little bit about your role at Mad Magazine, do you do actual in issue comics as well as the fold in?
So now, well, I used to. Now Mad is all reprint inside, except for the fold in. Except for the fold in and the covers. So it's basically like a super special that you'd get, in years past, where it's like a collection of, greatest hits or whatever, or, it's themed, like, it's like they usually are like summer super special and, it's just kind of like summer shit, I mean, but
I'm subscribed to it and I get it. And for some reason, it didn't even occur to me that
it's all
that's what it was.
So if you look closer, like on each article, it'll say originally printed in 1957 or whatever. And that's why some of them are like, why are they showing like I don't even know what them like the Exorcist. It's like, why are they printing this? But that's why it's all reprint because God, is it like 3 or 4 years ago now? AT&T acquired Time Warner, which is the parent company of DC, which owns Mad Magazine, right? Or published Mad. And so, with the new ownership, corporate ownership, they're just looking to make everything more profitable. And, so with Mad, it's much more profitable to just reprint the old stuff. And
you don't have to pay artists for new content.
Yeah. So, it totally sucks. It's a super bummer, man. It's, it really kind of like takes away the like, I mean, I still feel like it's a huge honor to be doing this. And like, but it's just like, it really kind of like, it's like, it's a great honor, but there's like this asterisk on it where, if it was, because it would be so much better if it was like all the other regular contributors at the same time. Cause that's what the best part of it was with Mad. It was like, you just had the who's who of the what's what doing all this stuff. And, you just don't have that right now.
Well, I mean, it was a social commentary was like a huge, I mean, that's what Mad Magazine was, is it was like a lampoon on modern popular culture.
Yeah.
And so it was always relevant to what was going on in the world. And yeah, I think that was probably its greatest achievement, really, aside from having, pretty much the best cartoonists of the last 100 years of this country all in one place. Like as a matter of fact, not the last issue, I don't think, but maybe the issue before, the table of contents was like a Jack Davis,
the boxing one.
Yeah. And it's
I saw that in person at the offices.
God,
it's insane.
I was looking at that and I was just like,
Yeah.
this dude, like they had that dude, you know what I mean? Like on their payroll, like, and then on top of like, you know, Jaffe and all those dudes, like, I mean,
that was, and I think that one was the second version of it. Cause like he did one and like, I don't know who the editor was at the time, like, whatever, but like, they're like, eh.
Can you imagine the balls you'd have to
totally.
fucking do that?
Yeah. But just like real quick, just kind of with the Mad thing, like, so like, AT&T now has signed a deal with Discovery Media to offload Time Warner Entertainment. And so those two are going to merge together. And I think, you know, it'll be separate from AT&T, and possibly something might happen with that. That's what we're all kind of holding on to hope for right now. I don't know. I mean, you gotta hope, man.
Dude, totally. To circle back a little bit though. So have you had your cartoons published in Mad before that happened? That's amazing, dude. Like, congratulations on that alone. I mean, come on, man. That's just that's so cool.
Totally, dude. That was like huge for me. I mean, the whole backstory, I don't know if you want to get into that, but like, it's, yeah, of course it was a lifelong dream, you know? I mean, it was also kind of like one of those things where I just, like, for me, like, you know, I've always been like ambitious, but also kind of like, I don't know, like, why would they want me? You know, like a lot of, you know, ambitious, but full of self-doubt, right? I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Like
any artist listening or musician listening, you know, totally
for
understands
sure.
that one.
So like, I just thought it was just not even possible. And plus I wasn't like consistently putting out like, you know, funny cartoons or like, you know, I didn't have a thing. I wasn't like, you know, this dude has this style that like, you know, we can always count on. Cause like, I'm still like that. Like, I don't know. I do a lot of different things, and I don't know. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it bites me in the ass, you know?
Well, for me, I absolutely love your Creative Differences comic strip. Is that something that you do regularly? Does it exist somewhere? Like, is there an archive of it, like on a website anywhere? Because it's any creative person, anybody who works as a professional creative, has to read it and laugh, like, because you managed to like distill all of our common experience as professional artists, illustrators, and graphic designers into like just like the face of consternation that you've mastered on the main character when he's confronted with something that we all put up with like on a daily basis. It's every single time I see it, I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Totally. It's on hiatus. I don't know if it's coming back. I mean, it was commissioned by what started up commissioned by this ad agency in Toronto called Co-op Advertising, and then the guy that started he was one of the partners of this co-op or this advertising agency, right? And he sold his share of the agency and started a freelance platform that he's been developing, right? And so, you know, then it became like, it's called Lively now. Originally it was called Lance. It's gone through several different iterations now. And so long story short, they're still funding this thing. It's still kind of getting off the ground, and I don't know what's going to happen. So like, it was also like with COVID, like it just kind of, everything just shut down. And
that blew up a lot of people's stuff.
Yeah. But also to answer your question, it just lives on Instagram at the moment. I used to have an archive of it on my website, but I think I took it down. I know I have an album of it on Facebook, and like that's been shared like 17,000 times, I think, like the whole album. So it was, yeah, it's definitely like my viral thing, you know. But yeah, and I don't know, for a minute too, I was like, I don't know. I just kind of keep saying the same thing over and over again. I'm like, how many times can you say like the invoice is late, you know, or whatever, you know, like I feel like we kind of said it all, you know, but
make the logo bigger.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a joy to do for sure.
Yeah, I love that strip. And, you know, going through your website a little bit this week in preparation for this, like and we talked a little bit about it before we started recording. Like you do some art prints that are very much like Mad Magazine kind of inspired. And it seems like there's like a character that you, like this redheaded guy, kind of long-headed redheaded guy that shows up in your work quite a lot. Like, is that?
Yeah. So that's my character that I made for my first ever comic book that I made in 2016 now. Yeah, his name is Total Fuck Up, and it's just kind of like a amalgamation of like me and my friends and my brothers and their brothers or my friends' brothers, whatever. Like, just kind of like I grew up with a lot of like burnout and like burnout adjacent people, and I mean. But yeah, so it's just kind of like a little snapshot of my childhood, really, through the lens of this lovable loser.
Yeah. So do you like those are kind of, there's a bunch, I feel like there's art prints of cartoons of his that you have on your site, or is there like there's different characters too that are similar?
Yeah.
Like I see there's like a house where the guy walks through the house, narrowly avoiding disaster.
Yes,
is that same character?
No, that's a different. His eyes are covered by his hair too. It's very, they're very similar. But and he wears a striped shirt, whatever, and a hat. And come on, man, he's different. Yeah, I don't really have a name for him, I don't think. But he's just kind of like a hobo, like a traveling wanderer, and gets into all kinds of exciting, magical adventures, I guess.
I love that. I love that poster. I'm going to order one of those. And then like there was another one. I don't know if it's an art print, but there was a piece that I recently saw with the puppy and the ball bouncing.
Oh yeah.
That's like, that's so super Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the kind of thing where it's like almost like the comic version of breaking the fourth wall, you know, where you're like using the boundaries of the piece to create the gag.
Right. Yeah. They're very meta. And that's for a friend of mine started this comic subscription service called Hey Kids Comics. And so like for $20 a month, you get a graphic novel every month that's kid appropriate and a zine that, you know, it's got full of like comic knowledge, interviews, activities, and, you know, comics. And I've been doing those comics, you know, like the dog and the ball one is one of them, and they're on the back cover. But those are a lot of fun. So like for that, like it's especially fun for me to try to do something more kid centric and like you said, just like it's like playing with the format and just kind of like, you know, messing with your mind a little bit and just you know, just having fun with it.
Well, it seems it is similar in concept to the fold-in that you do for Mad Magazine, where it plays with the page itself. You know what I mean? Like it manipulates the page itself. And how did you find yourself as the guy doing the fold-in? Like, how did that happen? Like, that's like everybody's favorite part of that magazine for forever. And you get to do it now. And like, that's insanely amazing. I mean,
yeah. Well, thanks, man. Yeah, it's a trip.
That's like literally a one of a kind job. Like there's only there's only one person who has that job.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and but sometimes I have to remind myself, like, holy shit, you know, this is. Yeah, it's surreal sometimes. But yeah, so long story short, like I did a spoof fold in for the Pitchfork Review, which was pitchfork.com's magazine. It was a print magazine, and a lot of it was whatever. It was, so this was 2014. And for the first issue, my friend Mike Mike Renaud, who worked at Pitchfork. He was art director, and he asked me to do the fold-in for the magazine. And I did, and I really liked it, and I thought I did a good job. So I sent it to Al Jaffe, care of Mad Magazine. It was just like, here you go. And like 3 or 4 months later, I got a letter back from him, and he's like, I really enjoyed your fold-in, and you did a great job. I couldn't have done a better job myself. I was like, what? And then he's like, if this is something you would consider doing again, let me know, because I'm not going to be doing this forever. It's like, basically he's saying, I'm getting too old to do this. And, if you want to take over, I'll talk to the editors. It's like, what? I wrote and drew like a little comic about it called Truly Madly, and it's on my website for you can read it on there for free. It's out of print. I could print them up again, but anyway, so that's got the whole story in there. So anyway, I reached out to Sam Viviano, who was the art director at Mad at the time, and he basically said, Al might be 92 or 94 at the time, wow. But he's still got a lot of gas in the tank, and so, but we take his word very seriously. And so that was when Mad was still in New York, and they had to move from New York to LA, and no one from New York came over because they all live in New York and they have lives there. And so with LA came the rebranding of it, and the new staff, like Bill Morrison was the editor, Susie Hutchison was the art director. She's still there. She's one of the 2 people left there. Anyway, and so he was still doing the fold-in when they moved, and I've visited LA a few times for Comic Arts LA, and while I was out there, I'm like, hey, can I come visit Mad? And they're like, come on over. And so that's when I kind of started the conversation up again about who's doing the fold-in after Al retires, and Bill told me you're number one in a line of one. I was the only one that was wow. Even asking about it. So I was like, okay. And so they started actually running some reprints of fold-ins because Al was sick. He had pneumonia. He was 98 at the time, maybe. And so eventually, I think it was when he was 99, they did the Al Jaffe Tribute issue. So it was all of Al's greatest hits, and there was still some new content for that one. Or, I actually did Snappy Answers for Stupid Questions that was written by Desmond Devlin. And anyway, they ran his fold-in that was to be his final fold-in. He did it 15 years ago. It was, he did it a while ago when he was still in New York, or, when Mad was in New York. They asked him to do it because, we need a final Al fold-in. And so they ran that one. And after that is when I started doing the fold-in. So that was the first one was June of 2020.
Oh, wow. So this is a totally new thing for you.
Yeah. But I've already, I think I've done 8 of them now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so awesome, man. That is super awesome. When did you start doing cartoon interior cartoons for Mad? Was that before you got that?
So that was shortly after I made the introduction. Oh, and okay. I visited New York with my wife for our anniversary, and I went to Mad and talked to Sam Viviano and Ryan Flanders, and it was great. We got the tour. It was amazing. And they're like, so, where's your portfolio? I'm like, what?
They totally thought you were coming to pitch.
Yeah. We could look at my website. I didn't bring anything. They're like, what? Oh,
that probably made it a little more enticing to them. They're like, oh, he's just not trying to, I don't know. He's not here to try to get a job. He's here because he actually likes Mad Magazine.
Yeah, right. But yeah, and so we talked about Mad artists and stuff, and how they're all across the country and even the world, but that Al Jaffe was one of the only ones left that still lived in New York and actually in Manhattan. And I was like, oh yeah. He's like, yeah, it's not too far from here. It's like, okay. So I actually, that day, I think I I sent an email to Al asking if it'd be okay to stop by, and he's like, "Come on over." And that's when I met him. And
you have a strip on your website about that, right? That meeting
yeah,
with Jaffe.
right.
Yeah, I read that, and I was like, "That's rad that you made a comic strip out of meeting Al Jaffe." Like,
yeah,
of course, it makes perfect sense, right?
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. I know, and I'm kind of planning and plotting like a follow up to it. It's like, okay, now I got the job, and like, what happens after that? Because it's definitely not what I expected. I mean, it's like doing the work is everything I wanted, but it's like I was saying earlier. It's just like, oh, but come on, I want to be by myself doing it. I don't want to be the last guy doing this. But if that's what I am, I am.
Yeah,
I guess that's it.
Hopefully, when all that corporate maneuvering happens, they bring it back with original content inside, because that would be super rad, and I would like to see your work in there for sure. Because I think that I've been a fan of your. Obviously, I've said a bunch of times I've been a fan of your work. For 15 or 20 years, as long as we've been connected through the illustration world, and I think it's like a perfect manifestation of your two different styles of working, your painting style and your cartoon style. So I think if there's anybody that I have known or been friends with professionally, you are the guy, right? For as far as I'm concerned, like you probably, I could see somebody like Tom Standard doing a really good job, because he is also one of my favorite cartoonists, and I wish he did more cartooning. He used to do a lot, and his cartoons are hilarious, and
they are.
Tom's one of my. He won't come on the podcast. It makes me insane, because he's just such a private guy. He's just like a low key private guy. Luckily, I was able to meet him at one of the flat stocks, and he's a super good dude. But he's one of my favorite creative people. Like everything Tom does, I'm like, it's like how I wish I could do it. It's like he writes a book, and I'm like, I wish I could write a book like that, or cartoons or whatever it is. Yeah, Tom's awesome, man. Tom is really awesome. So I could see him getting stuff in there, and like he's got the right flavor, I think, for that. But hopefully we can all hope that that's actually what happens with Mad, as that whole thing moves forward. Another thing that we talked about a little bit before we started recording, that I have to talk about, is that you painted one of my favorite album covers of all time, when you did the Invisible Girl cover for King Kong and Barbecue Show. And people who aren't even familiar with that band have probably seen that cover before. It's like one of those iconic album covers that, it's like, and again, it's in your kind of vintagey, gouache style, and it fits the band so well. And I love it. I love it so much that and like you said, I believe your comment was that you weren't even familiar with the band when you did it.
No,
and
that's not.
I became familiar with the band because I loved that cover so much.
No. I was familiar with the band. I got a story about that. But I had a couple of people tell me that they had no idea who they were, but they bought that album based on the artwork, and that was like the highest compliment. It's like, oh man! And then they love the band. They're a great band.
They're so good.
Yeah, and so I don't know how much you guys talk about like doing free jobs and stuff like that. Like,
talk about whatever you want on my show, man.
Right, but I mean, like, it's like, oh, don't do these posters for free. But like, I did a poster for free for King Kong Barbecue Show when they came to Chicago, and at the time I was doing advertising work, and it was like flush with like storyboard money. I'm like, fuck yeah, man, I'm living the dream, right? And I was like, and I'm just kind of learning how to screen print again through Screwball, and so I was like, I printed up a poster for him. I think I asked them like, hey, would you want one? They're like, sure. And I brought it to the show, gave them like half. I kept half. And it started a relationship. And from there, like I did the King Kong Shrines album cover for their greatest hits on Vice Records. Awesome. And from that, Vice knew about me. And so that's how I got the Action Bronson Rare Chandeliers gig, and from that, so that got me a relationship with Action, and so I've done 2 books with him, and it's just kind of spawned all these other things, and that lineage all goes back to this free poster I did, where it's like, because I will say to people like, nah, don't work for free. I mean, if it's for your friend's band or whatever, go crazy, but sometimes it works, So
you're the one person who had exposure pay off for them, like getting paid in exposure actually worked in your favor.
Right.
That's amazing. That's actually, I mean, I've talked about it before on the show. That's literally how I got started doing art for bands. Of course, I was, 15 in 1985, and it was how punk rock worked. I just started doing stuff like I'd print shirts or patches or whatever for bands, and I'd go to shows. I'd sell them out front to get enough money to get in, and then I'd find the band either around back or inside. I'd give them the rest and be like, sell all this stuff. I made it. I just wanted enough to get in. And that's how I made relationships that got me started doing art for punk rock bands. So I started getting paid to be an artist. Is literally the same way, just, a little different stage in life. But yeah, so there's a time and place for everything. You know what I mean? Like if you keep any doors totally closed, you're limiting your options. So there is a time and a place for everything. And I would say that generally speaking, it's not a good practice for anybody in the art and illustration and graphic design industry, because it lowers the bridge for everybody. And
totally.
Certainly all of us have suffered because of that over the last 15 years. The rates that we can charge are like nothing compared to what you could get 20 years ago. But, but at the same time, like, if there are definitely some instances where if I was asked to produce something for free that I knew was going to be like in Vice magazine or something like that, then, that might make sense. I would hope Vice wouldn't ask people to work for free, but
yeah, they do.
Every goddamn company does.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, you have created one of my probably top 5 album covers of all time. And I am an album cover artist, partially by trade. So,
thank you.
That's a very important list to be on for Mike Fisher. So congratulations to you.
Well, how big, I want to ask you, how big do you think the original art is on that?
Well, I can see that piece behind you, so I have a little bit of a
that's
a
a sketch. That's a sketch. That's not even like, that's from a different photo.
Okay. That's
a copy of a painting that I did of like this, from this book. It's a Man's World, and it's I don't know if it's a Norman. I don't even know who the artist is. It might not even be on there, but anyway. But that was the inspiration for the cover.
If I had to guess, as a professional, my guess would be I would do it at twice the size that it needed to be in its final. So 24 by 24 probably would be my guess.
It's actually like 36 by 36. It's pretty big. It's and it's acrylic on linen, I think.
So it's not gouache.
Mm-mm.
No, wow, acrylic. But you totally simulated that look perfectly. God damn.
Thanks. I brought it up to the roof of. We lived at this condo, and I had to brought it up to the roof on a cloudy day. It was sunny, but it was like diffuse light. It was perfect. I borrowed my friend's camera to shoot it.
What year was that?
I
don't even know when the record
2009, because
so
my
a little over a decade.
Because I actually painted some of that with my daughter on my lap, like sleeping, like. Yeah.
Yeah. Every artist also has that story of like something you worked on where it was like one of my most famous posters that ended up in the Grammy Museum is a Cannibal Corpse poster. And I drew it by candlelight on Christmas night because the power was out in Los Angeles. My ex-wife, my children's mother, had gotten food poisoning because there was like a strike going on with the grocery stores, and I bought her some fish for Christmas dinner. And anyway, she got food poisoning. She went to bed at like 5:00 before it was even all the way dark. And so me and my 3 kids, they were probably between 10 and 15. We just like hung out on Christmas night by candlelight, and we're just playing dumb games, catch with the ball, whatever, just dumb stuff. And I was like, well, I'm gonna work. And so they just like hung out around the dining room table, and like I just drew this poster by candlelight. And because I didn't have a computer, none of it's digital. It's one of the only pieces I ever did that was 100% drawn by hand. And so every time I look at it, I remember that Christmas with my kids. It's like
place.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that kind of stuff, man.
Me too.
It's like better than a photo album sometimes, It's like, I look at drawings I did, when I was like 19 or 20 years old for a band, and I'll be like, and like it'll just take you back, because like there's a lot of stuff that we do as there's this weird thing about being an artist or even a creative of any kind, whether a photographer or a musician or whatever it is, but there's this mirage of the next level, that's like always somewhere out in front of you, and you never seem to be able to get there. It's like always, it's like the carrot in front of you all the time. And then there are certain stages of your career where you are able to stop and look back and be like, oh, I totally got there like 5-10 years ago, but I didn't even pay attention because it's always building. Right. And so there are definitely these times where you can see something you did at a later time and look at it and go, that was a big deal. And I should have acknowledged it better at the time,
Yeah, totally. I know, because sometimes things don't feel like a big deal, and that's because you've done it so many times now, and I totally. I don't think I've really. Sometimes I feel like I'm just moving laterally, and things I'm not really upping, or like I'm not moving upwards. Like it's I'm just kind of doing the same thing over and over again, or. But then I have to step back and I'm like, oh, fuck, no, I've actually kind of achieved this, level of success, and, it is what it is. Cause sometimes success is just like, all right, I'm doing the mad folding, but I'm doing the mad folding, and mad's not what it used to be anymore. And I know I'm definitely not getting paid as much as Al Jaffe did, and I don't know, but like, it's not like there's never going to be a place where you just like stop and like, all right, I've done it. Cause you're always working. You're always looking for the next thing. You always want to keep doing something else. And, that's never going to end.
Yeah. I feel like that is absolutely true. Cause I mean, I can't imagine if I tried to sit and think about, the end, like, I don't even know what that would look like. Like sometimes my wife is like, she's looking forward to retiring, right? She's like, she's in the Hollywood, machine, and you're grinding her up all the time. And she's like working towards like the day when she can retire. You know what I mean? Like that's her focus is I'm getting prepared for the next decade, so I don't have to do this until I'm 75 years old. And, and she's like, what are you going to do when you retire? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, never. That's never going to happen. There's never going to be a time where I'm going to be like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what it would look like. I guess the only thing I could say is there might be certain things that I don't want to do anymore. Like I started painting goalie masks again real quick. I kind of couched that business for a little while because I was so burnt out on it. But I'm doing some again right now. And I could see myself being to the point where I was like, I'm never painting another goddamn goalie mask again. But like, like working for bands and stuff, the only way I would never do it is if I became too old for any band to be like, we want this old guy to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what, this ridiculousness, but I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm never going to not do what I do.
Right.
Like never. That's not even a thing that exists. Like it's so far out of my reality. I can't even picture it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, same. And especially like, I'm not like super close tight friends with Al Jaffe, you know, and also like, you know, he's 100 years old. He's still alive, right? It's like, I don't know. I mean, like, does he really want to hear from me? Like, should I call him up? But, you know, I have talked to him on the phone and stuff, but he works. I mean, he still draws, I think, but I mean, he was legit working till he was 99, 99 years old, man. Like, and getting published and stuff. That's, you know,
it's amazing.
I think that's, I mean, it's totally admirable. And I think, you know, it wasn't like under duress or anything. It was definitely, he wanted to do it. Right.
Right. So was he the publisher as well as one of the artists, or was he always just one of the artists? Like, did he take over a bigger role as the years went on over there? Or?
No, I mean, your role was as big as you pitched, like, you know, because I think, you know, a lot of the stuff was, you know, like, here's my idea for this, you know, comic, 2-page comic for Mad, and to be like, we love it, let's do it, you know. And so he would do it, and like, you know, Bill Gaines was the publisher. He and like, he would, you've heard of like the Mad trips, right? He would take them on these, you know, exotic vacations to, like, you know, Africa or whatever, and the only requirement was like you had to have a certain amount of pages that year published in Mad. So
in order to get to be invited on that trip. So
yeah.
people were like pitching stuff all the time so they could try to get enough pages to go on the trip. That's a pretty good incentive. That's
well,
pretty smart.
You'd also get paid for it too. And they were, you know, but, you know, so that was a perk.
I wonder when the highest point in popularity and profit for Mad Magazine was.
I think it's 1972, I think. They had, I've read a lot about it. I haven't retained all the facts, but I do know that one. And like, because at that point, I think they had like a circulation or a subscription number of like 2 million or something like that. It was insane, but it's been going down ever since. And that's, you know, it's like this whole AT&T thing is, you know, a huge blow to it, but it, you know, it had been, you know, in trouble before. Yeah.
Do you know what year it started, Mad Magazine?
It's 50. Fuck, I should know this.
I seem to recall it's definitely 50s.
Yeah, it's 50s something. Like I said, don't know.
It's
all
one
the
of those
facts.
things that, like, when I was a kid, since I wasn't a comic book guy, if I was like, you know, at the store and I needed to like, Mom, I need to get some, like, I want something. Like I would frequently buy Mad Magazine. Totally. I was never a subscriber as a kid. And so it's like, you know, and then I'd get like the books too. Like they'd have like the little anthology books and stuff. And I had a bunch of those things. And so Mad was always like a thing that, you know, it's like that. It's like when you're a little kid, there are things in everybody's life that are just always there. You know, like Mad was just always there. Like if I was in my room and I was like, you know, we got an hour before I go to bed and I don't want to do my homework or whatever, I just grab one of the Mad magazines off my bookshelf. And, you know, my family were like, we were all avid readers, and my parents were very much like, we don't really care what you read as long as you're reading. You know what I mean? Totally. Within some limits, but I broke the limits a lot. Like I read The Exorcist when I was like 10 or 11 or something. Wow. I think I read Jaws like I might have been even younger than that when I read Jaws, just because I was so totally obsessed with the movie. But so it was like, you know, they really didn't care most of the time what I was reading. And my dad was, you know, kind of a cartoonist, so he liked Mad Magazine. So it was like, oh yeah, it was always around. It was just always part of my life when I was a kid. Like, got to go to the doctor's office, bring Mad Magazine to read in the waiting room. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah, man, this has been a really killer conversation, dude. I'm so glad I finally reached out to have you on. You know, one of the other things that comes with being a creative person is that constant sense of like I was afraid to ask because I didn't know if you'd be interested in being on. You know what I mean? And it's like, but we all live inside of our own head, and it gets weird. So I'm glad I finally asked you to be on. This like super great conversation. It was like super awesome to learn how you found yourself where you are, and like, you know, your schooling and stuff like that. It was like super killer to have you on. I appreciate your time.
I'm honored to be on here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Hope to see you in real life someday.
Yeah, if this thing ever ends and you're back out here in California again for any of those comic conventions or any of that stuff, I'll make a point.
Let's go skate.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that the pandemic has definitely done in me and my wife's lives is it made us realize that we don't go do enough stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, for years it was like, oh, so-and-so's in town, or this convention's happening, or, like Designer Con or Comic Con or any of, like, even just going to the goddamn movies, it was like, we would find excuses to just stay at home. Yeah. And one of the things that we've kind of pinky promised is when we can, we're going to not be that way anymore. We're going to go do things more often. It was like Disneyland was like the thing we do. Like if we were going to not stay at home, like we had days off or whatever, we'd go to Disneyland. But that was, that's not enough. Yeah. you gotta have friends. You got to see people. You got to do like all this stuff, It's like, and that's another part of the downside of being a professional artist is like there's no day off.
No days off.
There's no day off.
Always thinking.
There's like not even really any like time off. You know what I mean? Like
I know.
when I'm done recording with you here, I'm going to go do something, and then I'm going to go do something else, and then I'm going to go do something else, and maybe I'll remember to go eat dinner. It's fun, All right, man. I'm going to let you go. I'm sure you probably have stuff you've got to get to as well.
I do.
But I appreciate your time, man, and we'll talk again soon.
Cool, man. See you, Mike.